data sets in here. So this figure simply records or reflects upon the changes, for instance, in rocky habitat versus sandy habitat versus mixed sand or mud coastline around the system. So really enormous forcings of habitat, not occurring once, but more than 25 times over this 1.3 million year history, when lake level dropped at least 200 meters and probably 15 times when it dropped more than 400 meters below modern. So incredible variability in the habitat for these creatures in this system. Okay, so let me just summarize some of the key observations that we've come across. First of all, that we were surprised that we didn't have just a pure precessional response or perhaps a pure glacial interglacial response in our climate proxies. And it probably comes back to, it's a far more complex system than I appreciated when we started this project, but it turns out that southeastern Africa receives moisture from a couple different places. Okay, it certainly feels the impact of the Southeast African monsoon on a regular basis, but a lot of the moisture it receives is coming across from the Atlantic Ocean. Right, so there's a major boundary called the Congo Air Boundary that has drifted back and forth across the African continent, and that's especially influencing this area in the southern part of the continent. Another major surprise in this project was the LGM was barely detected in Lake Malawi. The hydroclimate response was trivial compared to these earlier events. And this also stands in strong contrast to what we observe in the northern hemisphere tropics. Right? If we go to Ethiopia and to Kenya, there's a well-documented record that there was severe drought underway at the last glacial. And so at least in Lake Malawi, this was really a trivial event compared to this, what we've described as this mega drought interval. Turns out that 100,000 year event that we see very clearly in this system, very pronounced in the stratigraphy and the cores and the geophysics, it's replicated in Lake Tanganyika very clearly. We don't have long drill core records from Lake Tanganyika yet, but there's extensive geophysical data clearly show the same characteristics, low stand delta packages, a severe drawdown, and there's even suggestions that this mega drought extended to the likes of Lake Basumptwi in the western in West Africa. This period of maximum variability then extended from about, or it ended around 70,000 years ago when eccentricity forcing was perhaps diminished. And we see this major transition at the mid-Pleistocene, this major change at the mid-Pleistocene transition. So before that, it was a somewhat drier climate, and then after the mid-Pleistocene transition, on average wetter, but much higher amplitude changes, much higher amplitude variability. This also tends to be, this is also the time when we observe major expansion in hominin brain case. Okay. And so some folks have suggested that this could be implicated in that transition in our own species. And so finally, we have a lot to learn still about how cichlids have evolved here. I think we've provided a lot of context for our evolutionary biology colleagues to take a closer look at how some of these 1,000 species of cichlids have emerged in this system. Well, thanks so much for your patience on a Friday afternoon. I really appreciate you coming today. I'd be happy to take any questions.